In my opinion, protein is probably the most underrated macronutrient of all to help us control body composition. Carbohydrate and fat tend to get all of the attention as dieters try to eliminate one food or the other. But protein is extremely important for maintaining or even increasing muscle mass, losing body fat, increasing metabolism, and making you feel full for longer. You might think that you should only worry about protein if you want to add muscle and bulk up. But there are so many more aspects to protein than its ability to turn on muscle building, a process called muscle protein synthesis. Proteins are all an integral part of your cell membranes, your cytoplasm, and your organelles like the mitochondria. They are also components of your tendons and your skin and your hair. They make up enzymes and assist in metabolic reactions. Proteins are essential elements in hemoglobin, the oxygen transport protein found in red blood cells, and plasma proteins, which are involved in transport of various substances in the blood. They're also very important in buffering acidity in your blood and in your cells. They assist in your body's natural immune system response too. And many hormones like insulin and growth hormone are proteins as well. Proteins are large components of muscle, and they produce movement in your muscle tissue because they contract to help you bend your arm or stand up or just to get around. These proteins are called actin and myosin. Proteins can even be an energy source to provide ATP, or the actual energy currency of your body used to produce work for all of your metabolic needs and daily activities. So, as you can tell, proteins are involved in just about every bodily process that we have. In terms of your body composition, eating protein can help boost your metabolism. In fact, there are a number of foods and supplements that are thought to boost your resting metabolic rate. But research from my lab and from other exercise and nutrition scientists suggests that you can do that by including more protein in your diet and by eating lean protein with every meal. Foods like chicken, turkey breast, fish, and lean beef. Plant protein sources like beans, legumes, some grains, and tofu can be incorporated as well. This strategy can be controversial, but much of the current research supports the fact that protein should make up around 20 to 30% of your diet. This is higher than the 10 to 15% that has traditionally been recommended. This recommendation applies to healthy individuals free from kidney disease, because protein could be an added stress to someone with diseased kidneys. And protein is especially important when trying to lose weight. But first, let's step back for a minute and go over some of the basics about protein. Similar to carbohydrates and fats, proteins contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. But proteins also have nitrogen, and it's attached to their structure. It is this nitrogen found in protein that distinguishes it from the other macronutrients. And proteins are composed of amino acids that are linked together by peptide bonds. There are 20 different amino acids that exist, and they can all combine to make unique and new cells and different proteins in our bodies. But because so many different types of foods can provide you with protein, how can you tell if a specific protein or a protein food is a good quality protein? Well, one way to tell is by knowing the biological value of the protein. The higher the biological value, the higher the quality. I need to explain what I mean by biological value here. There are two types of proteins, essential and non-essential. They are either essential to include in our diets because our bodies don't make them, or non-essential because our bodies make them from other proteins, so we don't need to worry about eating them. There are 11 non-essential and 9 essential amino acids. And as you probably guessed, essential amino acids are the ones we tend to worry about most. When proteins contain all of the essential amino acids, they are called complete proteins, and they have a high biological value. These proteins are typically from animal sources and include meat, poultry, fish, eggs, milk, and cheese. And when food does not have all of these essential amino acids, they are called incomplete proteins, and they have a low biological value. These are lower quality proteins that are missing at least one of the essential amino acids. So a diet made up of incomplete proteins may eventually lead to protein malnutrition. Examples of incomplete proteins are usually found in plants, grains, nuts, and vegetables. Classifying the amino acids like this is probably most important for those of you who do not eat animal products. This is because animal meats contain all of the essential amino acids, but plant products generally do not. This means that one or more of the amino acids will be missing, which could mean that you won't be able to make certain proteins that your body needs. The good news is that most people don't eat only one source of plant food, though. And by combining various types of incomplete proteins, you can make up for any amino acids that were missing in your diet. This is called eating complementary proteins. And the most common example of this is to eat rice and beans together. One exception is soy. Soy is a plant product that does contain all of the essential amino acids, making it a complete protein. Of the 9 essential amino acids, 3 are important to point out because they are called branched-chain amino acids. Now, branched-chain amino acids can provide some fuel during long bouts of exercise or when we go long periods of time between eating. They may also help to improve body composition. The 3 branched-chain amino acids are leucine, isoleucine, and valine. As the name implies, these amino acids have a branched side chain that distinguishes them from the other amino acids. If you work out, it turns out that consuming branched-chain amino acids may be beneficial in preventing muscle damage and helping to repair damaged muscle tissue. One study investigated the effect of eating foods containing branched-chain amino acids 60 minutes before a 90-minute aerobic exercise session at moderate intensity. These researchers wanted to see whether they had any impact on muscle damage after exercise. Well, what they found was that the biological markers of muscle damage and muscle soreness were lower when branched-chain amino acids were eaten before exercise compared to a placebo group that took no amino acids before exercise. This means that you may be less sore and uncomfortable after moderate to strenuous exercise if protein is consumed beforehand. Something like milk, yogurt, or a protein shake could do the trick. With regard to body composition, of the 3, leucine, isoleucine, and valine, it's leucine that gets the most attention. This is because leucine is considered to be the trigger to start muscle protein synthesis. In fact, research suggests that you not only want to eat some protein at each meal, but that you might also want to make sure that you're getting roughly 2 to 3 grams of leucine in the protein foods that you choose to eat. This is pretty easy to do. Most lean meats eaten in a normal palm-sized portion will provide 2.5 to 4.5 grams of leucine. You can also get about half to 1 gram of leucine by drinking 1 cup of cow's milk. Also, eating beans or nuts will provide around 2 to 3 grams of leucine per cup. So, before a workout, you might think about a snack of milk, yogurt, beans, and nuts, or a protein shake. Now, over the past 5 to 10 years, I've seen a huge increase in scientific papers that support using protein or amino acids to prevent the loss of muscle as a result of aging or extreme exercise like marathon running, long-distance triathlon, or even ultra-distance events. The scientific literature has repeatedly shown that a higher protein diet helps with fat loss and improves body composition. But you may be wondering how protein does all of these positive things in our bodies, and how can you use it to improve your body composition? Well, some amino acids, like the branched-chain amino acids and alanine, among others, can be used to make adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, in your energy systems. In this way, it is estimated that protein contributes as much as 10 to 15% of your energy supply during intense, prolonged exercise. Now, one common way to use amino acids for energy is to convert them to glucose in a process called the glucose-alanine cycle. This is one way to produce new glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, which is known as gluconeogenesis. This is how the amino acid alanine contributes to energy production. Research shows that the more oxygen a person consumes, like when breathing heavily from exercise, the greater the amount of leucine she or he uses as a fuel source. So in the process of eating protein, using it to make other proteins, and using protein for energy, proteins are constantly being broken down or metabolized and built back up or synthesized. This process is called protein turnover. Now, this turnover process is never ending, which is why we must eat a good amount of protein in our diets, particularly when we exercise a lot. And one common question then is, how much protein do we need to eat? In order to figure that out, it's important to talk about your nitrogen balance. Remember that nitrogen is part of the protein that distinguishes it from carbohydrates and fat on a chemical level. Now, in the lab, we can measure nitrogen balance, which is defined as the balance between nitrogen intake and nitrogen output. And protein foods can be analyzed for their nitrogen content. And this will take care of the nitrogen in part of the nitrogen balance equation. And doctors can then analyze nitrogen from body output, including urine, feces, sweat, skin, and hair. And when nitrogen intake is higher than nitrogen output, you are in a positive nitrogen balance. So in this scenario, you will be likely to be anabolic. And if in muscle growth mode, you are trying to maintain or build muscle mass or lose fat, you want to be in a positive nitrogen balance. When nitrogen intake is less than nitrogen output, you are in a negative nitrogen balance. You would likely be sacrificing muscle to support your protein needs in this case. And this occurs during very long and intense workouts, if you don't eat for very long periods of time, or during the normal process of aging, if you don't pay attention to how much protein you eat. You can see that positive and negative nitrogen balance states are drastically different and are both very important to your overall body composition. And factors that may influence nitrogen balance include protein quality, like complete or incomplete, and amino acid content, and total calorie intake. Now, high-quality animal proteins like eggs and dairy products are best because of their amino acid content and their high digestibility. That is, they are easy to digest and absorb. As I mentioned earlier, plant proteins have a lower digestibility, meaning they are harder to digest and absorb and are low in some of the essential amino acids. In fact, a common recommendation for vegetarians is to increase protein intake by about 10% just to account for this. And you should now understand that the amount of protein in your diet can make a difference to overall body composition and health. But protein needs can change based upon how much and what type of exercise you do. So, how does exercise affect our protein needs? Well, endurance and resistance exercise can use or burn a lot of calories. This fact alone would require more protein in your diet. But exercise also puts a lot of strain on your body's protein stores. These protein stores are known as the amino acid pool. And one study measured nitrogen balance in young and middle-aged distance runners. Now, these runners were randomly assigned to a low, moderate, or high protein intake from egg and milk proteins for 10 days. And nitrogen balance was measured in the final 5 days of each of the low, moderate, and high protein diets. And whether the athletes were young or middle-aged, a low protein diet made all the runners on that diet fall into a negative nitrogen balance. the moderate protein intake, which was just above the current recommended dose of 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, or 0.36 grams per pound of body weight, where they made about half the runners go into a positive nitrogen balance, but the other half remained in a negative nitrogen state. But when a high protein diet was given, the majority of runners were in a positive nitrogen balance. So in runners, regardless of age, research shows that protein intake that is higher than current recommendations was best, in this study, to promote an environment that stops muscle wasting. In this study, the high protein diet was 1.21 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, or 0.6 grams per pound. If you weigh 145 pounds or 66 kilograms, this would be about 80 grams of protein per day. But if you weigh 185 pounds or 84 kilograms, this would be about 100 grams of protein per day. Now, just as a reminder, you simply divide your body weight in pounds by 2.2 to get your weight in kilograms. But does the same thing happen if you lift weights instead of run? Well, the short answer is yes. Research used men who were new to lifting weights and sedentary men, and they ate a low-protein diet that was actually just above what is currently recommended at 0.86 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day, or a moderate protein diet at 1.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day, or a high-protein diet at 2.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. And they did this for 13 days each. They found that in men who did not exercise, the low, moderate, and high protein diets all led to a positive nitrogen balance. But in men who lifted weights, only the moderate and high protein diets led to a positive nitrogen balance. So once again, we see that for people who choose to exercise, which I hope is all of you, a higher intake of protein is needed to give yourself the best possible chance to maintain or increase your muscle mass. It's important to tell you, though, that there were no differences in protein synthesis between the moderate 1.4 grams of protein and the high 2.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight groups. So this tells us that around 1.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, or 0.64 grams of protein per pound of body weight, may be optimal for promoting protein synthesis. So again, if you weigh 145 pounds or 66 kilograms, this would be about 92 grams of protein. And if you weigh 185 pounds or 84 kilograms, this would be about 118 grams of protein per day. You could eat 90 grams in a typical day if you ate 2 large eggs at breakfast, 1 cup of Greek yogurt at lunch, and a handful of almonds as a midday snack, and a 6-ounce chicken breast at dinner. The takeaway here is that protein breakdown increases when you exercise hard, and protein intake at an optimal level is required to maintain or improve muscle mass. Ultimately, you have the best chance at maintaining or improving muscle mass by choosing a diet with high rather than adequate protein levels. Now, you can probably tell that protein is good for your muscles, but what does this do to your metabolism and energy balance? Well, first, it's important to know that there are 3 major components of total daily energy expenditure. These include resting metabolic rate, the thermic effect of activity, and the thermic effect of food. And the largest percent of total daily energy expenditure belongs to our resting metabolic rate, close to 75%. And you may also remember that your metabolism tends to slow as you age. Now, the overall decrease in metabolism is only about 1 to 3% during the entire aging process, which really isn't that much. As we age, we lose about 5% of our muscle mass every 10 years. So from age 40 to age 80, you could lose as much as 20% of your muscle mass, which would lower your overall calorie burn and metabolism. But we can do something about it. For example, if your resting metabolism is 1,800 calories per day, then the metabolic decrease over time could be somewhere around 20 to 60 calories in total. And that's pretty easy to offset with just a few simple nutrition or exercise strategies. One of which just might be eating more protein. If you are used to eating minimal protein, as many adults do, then even doubling your intake from what is currently recommended is likely a great thing to try. So you would simply be sure to have a good protein source at each meal to base the rest of your meal around. Now, how does eating more protein help us to adjust to a slowing metabolism? Well, an interesting fact about the macronutrients that we eat, which are protein, carbohydrates, and fat, is that they all have what is called a coefficient of digestibility. What this means is that if you ate a food that was 100% carbohydrate, you would digest about 97% of that food. However, if it was all fat, you would digest about 95% of that food. But if you ate 100% protein, you would only digest about 92% of that food. Your body digests a certain percentage of those three macronutrients, and protein is the least digested compared to carbohydrate and fat. And that's because your body cannot oxidize or burn the nitrogen in protein sources of food. In essence, your body works hard to digest and absorb protein. And this is probably why eating protein gives you the largest increase in metabolism when eating it. This is called the thermic effect of food. A number of research studies have been designed to measure metabolism after a meal containing protein versus fat versus carbohydrate. And the majority of these indicate that the greatest increase in metabolism comes after eating protein. So by eating protein, you begin to increase your metabolism and your caloric burn. Now, outside of the increase in metabolism we get from eating protein, it also makes us feel full or satiated after eating it. Here the research is also clear. Low protein intake is linked to increased feelings of hunger and desire to eat again, while increased protein intake is linked to decreased feelings of hunger and less desire to eat again. And even without exercise, our research is showing that adding protein to the diet of overweight but otherwise healthy people can improve body composition. For example, in overweight and obese adults, nutrition scientists demonstrated that a protein supplement providing 56 grams per day of whey protein with no other dietary alterations resulted in significantly lower body fat mass by 5 pounds or 2.3 kilograms over 23 weeks of doing this. This was compared to a carbohydrate supplement of equal calories given to another test group. So you can see that eating more protein may be the best nutritional strategy to manage body composition, given its influence on metabolism, satiety, and even maintenance of muscle mass. And the impact of a high protein diet when combined with an exercise program can provide even better results for improving metabolism and body composition. In fact, I collaborated on a research project with lead investigator Dr. Paul Arciero from Skidmore College and found that a diet high in protein, which is about 40%, combined with exercise training that included both resistance training and high-intensity interval training was optimal for reducing both body weight and body fat in obese men and women between 40 and 60 years old. This protein and exercise combination also helped to maintain or even improve muscle mass. And in 2014, we teamed up to see what sort of exercise was best with a higher protein diet. Our results were really interesting. We found that the greatest improvements in body composition of middle-aged, overweight, and/or obese men and women when they ate a high-protein diet and included high-quality variety of exercise in their weekly schedules. They completed 4 days of exercise per week, 1 day of weight training, 1 day of sprint interval training to really get the heart rate going, 1 day of stretching and yoga, and 1 day of slower endurance exercise. Dr. Arciero and I called this program the PRIZE program, which stands for protein, resistance exercise, interval training, stretching or yoga, and endurance. The prize group was compared to two other groups. One group had a higher protein diet but no exercise program, and the other group had a high protein diet but also lifted weights. Interestingly, all three groups lost fat and improved body composition. But as you might imagine, lifting weights improved things further, and adding the variety of exercise was the best overall. Now, back to that question I raised earlier. Just how much protein do I need? Well, the standard recommendation is 0.8 grams per kilogram, or 0.36 grams per pound of body weight per day. So if you weigh 150 pounds, which is 68 kilograms, that would give you a daily protein requirement of 55 grams of protein per day. This is equivalent to about 2 eggs for breakfast, which would give you roughly 12 grams, 1 chicken breast for lunch, which would give you about 40 grams, and 1 Greek yogurt, which would be about 10 grams of protein. But as we discussed, we need more to have optimal body composition as the response. The most recent research tells us that we should be consuming up to about double the current recommendation for protein. So that would be around 1.6 grams per kilogram or 0.73 grams per pound of your body weight or higher if your goal is weight loss. Now this will give you your best shot at maintaining your muscle mass while also losing fat. So if you weigh 150 pounds or 68 kilograms, your new protein requirement would come in close to 110 grams of protein or possibly more per day. You would essentially add another lean cut of protein to a salad and have a glass of milk and a large serving of vegetables. Now, most people don't like to remember these numbers, and honestly, getting bogged down with them makes adding more protein difficult to put into practice. So for most women, the best option is to aim for about 1 palm-sized portion of protein every time you eat. And for most men, you can aim for 2 palm-sized portions of protein at each meal. This will, surprisingly, come quite close to your optimal needs for protein without having to count and weigh everything you eat. Now, I typically don't suggest weighing foods, but sometimes it does help in the short term. For example, you could weigh your foods to start out and get an idea of the weight and content of the foods you eat most often. But after some time, using the hand method is much more convenient. One note, of course, is that these and any recommendations should be discussed with a qualified professional for you to get specific recommendations. You want information that best suits your lifestyle and health status. But one point I want to make clear is that eating more protein will not change things so drastically that it will automatically make your body fat melt off or make your muscles big and strong. In short, it will not magically give you your optimal body composition. But eating protein at every meal, combined with the other strategies that you'll learn in this course, like exercising right, just might set you up with the ideal scenario to begin to see changes if you're searching for them. So try this. Make sure to have protein as a priority with every meal.